So we are in Book 2, Canto 6, the kingdoms and godheads of the greater life. We actually read 2 cantos about the little life. Now Sri Aurobindo has put the kingdoms and the godheads together. And he's been explaining to us that in this realm of the greater life, the mind is not limited by the senses. We use our senses to feel, experience the world around us, and understand things through our senses, communicating with the brain interprets it. But in this world, all the subtle experiences are much more powerful because the mind is not limited by external sense. And therefore, the beings there, they feel each other's feelings very much. Others' sensations come passing through like waves, and that makes the subtle body feel. Their anger rushed, galloping in brute attack, a charge of trampling hooves on shaken soil. Or one felt another's grief invade the breast. Another's joy exulting ran through the blood. Hearts could draw close through distance. Even when people are on different continents, they can feel each other, the hearts, the feelings, the emotions. And even here, they could hear voices that spoke upon the shore of alien seas at a distance. So I'm going to start reading from there, from line 505 on page 187. There beat a throb of living interchange. Being felt being even when afar, and consciousness replied to consciousness. And yet, the ultimate oneness was not there. There was a separateness of soul from soul. An inner wall of silence could be built. An armor of conscious might protect and shield. The being could be closed in and solitary. One could remain apart in self, alone. Identity was not yet, nor union's peace. All was imperfect still, half known, half done. The miracle of inconscience overpast, the miracle of the superconscious still unknown, self-wrapped, unfelt, unknowable, looked down on them, origin of all they were. As forms they came of the formless infinite, as names lived of a nameless eternity. The beginning and the end were there occult. A middle term worked, unexplained, abrupt. They were words that spoke to a vast, wordless truth. They were figures crowding an unfinished sum. None truly knew himself or knew the world, or the reality living there enshrined. Only they knew what mind could take and build out of the secret supermind's huge store. A darkness under them, a bright void above. Uncertain they lived in a great climbing space. By mysteries they explained a mystery. A riddling answer met the riddle of things. As he moved in this ether of ambiguous life, himself was soon a riddle to himself. As symbols he saw all and sought their sense. So this he, of course, is King Asvapati. He's exploring these worlds, and we are reading the description of his experiences there. Poonam, would you start? Line 505.
There beat a throb of living interchange. Being felt being, even when afar. And consciousness replied to consciousness. And yet, the ultimate oneness was not there. There was a separateness of soul from soul. An inner wall of silence could be built, an armor of conscious might protect and shield. The being could be closed in and solitary. One could remain apart himself alone. Identity was not yet nor unique species.
Thank you. So he's explaining this idea of living interchange. There's a kind of constant communication on the life level going on. A throb, it's like a heartbeat, no? And so the beings could feel each other. I don't know whether we can imagine this. When we see somebody that we know, we recognize them by their appearance. But suppose we're at more distance and we don't actually see them, but we just get their vibration and we know, oh, that's Joel, that's Kamala, that's Poonam, that's Ravi. We could identify them by the vibration, even when we can't see them. Through this throb of living interchange. So the beings can feel each other even when they're at a distance, afar. And consciousness can respond to consciousness. But he says this is not the ultimate oneness. This is not the supreme union where all beings feel their oneness all the time. It is possible still for people to voluntarily separate themselves. No? There was a separateness of soul from soul, and at will they can build an inner wall of silence to protect themselves, to keep them separate from others. As an armor, as a protection, an armor of conscious might, of conscious power, can be used to protect and shield themselves. And if they want to be closed in and solitary, they can do that. They can put up that wall. No? They could remain apart in self, alone. So this is not yet the ultimate identity of oneness. No? And it's not the ultimate union which brings peace, because there's no longer any clash and conflict. Dana, would you read?
All was imperfect still, half known, half done. The miracle of inconscience goes past. The miracle of the superconscious still, unknown, self-wrapped, unfelt, unknowable. Look down on him, origin of all being. As forms they came of the formless infinite, as names lived of a nameless eternity. The beginning and the end were there above. The middle term broke the unexplained, abrupt. They were words that spoke to a vast world of truth. They were figures crowding an unfinished song.
Thank you. So from this point of view, everything is still imperfect, only half done, half achieved. But something has been done. The miracle of inconscience has been overpassed. And it's interesting that Sri Aurobindo says that the inconscience in itself is something so miraculous. How can it be, this inconscience, this apparent total lack of consciousness? And yet, in that inconscience, by that inconscience, so much is done. But now, we are not in that total inconscience of matter. We're in the realm of life, and even of the greater life. So something has been overpassed, that state of complete inconscience. But there's a yet higher state, the state of superconscience, that is still unknown. It's as if it's wrapped up, involved in itself. So it's not felt, it's not known, but it's looking down on this realm and the beings in that realm, because that superconscient is actually their origin, the origin of their existence. Those beings there are coming as forms. They've been given birth to by the formless, the infinite formlessness. They've come out of that formless state. And they are names, individuals, beings who've come out of a nameless eternity. So the beginning, the infinite and the eternal, is still hidden. They are not understanding or aware of that fully. And the end is also hidden from them. What will be the fulfillment of all this process? They are in this life realm, a middle term. It's neither the beginning nor the end. It's something in the middle. And we might remember much earlier in the poem, in Book 1, Canto 4, he spoke there about the way our material universe is something which seems to be cut off from its beginning and its end. Here he's saying something similar about the realm of life. So the beings there are something like words that are speaking. They're speaking to a vast, wordless truth. You know? Another way of thinking about it, the poet says, is to think of them as figures in a complicated mathematical calculation. Figures that there are so many of these figures in the calculation, but it's not complete. We don't know what is the end, the result of the calculation.
Here, both the inconscience and superconscience are described as miracle. The miracle of inconscience and the miracles of the superconscience.
Yes, two different miracles. They're both miracles.
Two different miracles.
But they are, yes, but both miraculous. No, so miraculous. Maybe we don't always think of the inconscient as being miraculous, but how can the one supreme consciousness, how can it become inconscient? It does that. It's as if it voluntarily plunges itself into this state of apparent total, he often speaks of it as trance, withdrawing all its consciousness. So there seems to be no consciousness. It's a miracle. And then beyond, there's the superconscient. That's still unknown, still looking down on them, but it's the origin from which everything has come. Ravi.
No one truly knew himself or knew the world, or the reality living there can shine. Only they knew what mind to take and build out of the secret supermind's huge store. A darkness under them, a bright void above. Uncertain they lived in a great climbing space. By mysteries they explained a mystery. A riddling answer made the riddle of things.
Yes. So all those beings there, despite this sensitivity and capacity for living interchange, none really knew himself or knew the world. Like us, none of us really knows ourselves and the world around us. But this is on the level of life mind. They don't know what is the reality which is enshrined in this world they live in. Only they knew what mind could take, something that life mind could take and build on, that it takes from the supermind. Supermind's huge store. From here, there they get something, but they don't really understand what they've got. They're aware of a darkness under them, the darkness of the inconscient. They're aware of a bright void, a bright emptiness above, the superconscient which they can't grasp. So they suffer from uncertainty. And they live in this space they can see that there are higher and higher levels. But they're not able to grasp or truly understand anything. By mysteries, they explained a mystery to themselves. And the riddle, the mystery of the world around them, only it gives back a riddling answer. Can't be fully understood. Bhuvana, just read these 3 words, 3 lines about King Aswapati.
As he moved in his fever of ambiguous life, himself was soon a little to himself. As symbols he saw all and saw persons.
So this is an important marker of a new stage in the description. There's Aswapati exploring that world, that atmosphere of ambiguous life, which is not clear, which is difficult to understand, riddling. He himself, to himself, becomes a riddle. After all that he has done and explored and understood, he's again bewildered. So he sees everything there as symbols and tries to understand their significance, their meaning. He sought their sense, their meaning. Philomena, will you read?
Across the different springs of death and birth, and over shifting borders of soul change, the hunter on the space creating track, he followed in life's fine and mighty trails, coursing a sea for formidable delight in a perilous adventure without close.
You know this word perilous? You know what it means? Perilous, dangerous adventure. And he doesn't come to the end of it. And I'm very fond of this first line. Across the leaping springs of death and birth. It's as if death and birth are streams. And we have to cross over one stream into life and over another stream into death. And they are leaping springs, they are moving very fast. And he has to pass over shifting borders of soul change, as if there's a lot of mist and cloudiness there. He is a hunter. We've seen him described as a hunter before, because he's on this great quest. He's hunting for something. At the moment, he's hunting on this track which has been left by the creative spirit and its creative work. Aswapati is following, as if he were following an animal in life's fine and mighty trails, all the tracks that life has left. He's pursuing, following her sealed, formidable delight, the delight Delight is a fundamental principle of life, no? But it's very powerful, formidable, and it's sealed. It's also secret. That's what he's following, this track of life's delight. And this is a dangerous adventure. And he doesn't come to the end of it. He doesn't find a clear solution. Even when we come right to the end of the canto, it's not clear. It's a perilous, dangerous adventure without close. Ganga Lakshmi.
So what is this?
Sorry.
Shifting borders of soul change.
Well, the language suggests a landscape. There are springs, there's water flowing. These are symbols. It says he sees everything as symbols. So there's the river of life and there's the river of death. And around and between the rivers, there's something like a mist moving so that the borderlines change all the time. And this mist is brought about by shifts in the state of his soul, what he's experiencing. That's how I understand it. So he's trying to track something. Ganga Lakshmi.
At first, no end appeared in those large steps. Only the wide source is so of all things looking toward the river.
A wider
source beyond. For us, she drove away forever to lands. The tenser value was felt from the unknown. Higher context of delivering thought drew her towards marvel and discovery. There came a right release from petty cares, a mighty image of desire and hope, a vaster formula, a greater sea.
So he's following the trail of life. And she is the source. At first, no aim appeared in those large steps that life is taking. He only sees that life is the wide source of all the things there. And they are looking towards an even wider source beyond. Because as the life goddess, the creative force, draws further and further away from earthly lines, from the way things are in the material universe, there's a stronger and stronger pull, a tenser drag from the unknown. The unknown is as if pulling him, drawing him, attracting him like a magnet. And it's giving him, or it's giving to her, a higher context of delivering thought. So this is further and further away from earthly things, a higher context of delivering thought that gives more freedom, is driving her, the creative force, towards marvel and discovery. So Aswapati feels a high release from pettier cares. Little things can be left behind. there's a greater freedom, a mightier image of desire and hope. Here we're in the realm of the greater life. So it's not small, small wishes and desires, no, and hopes. Those images of desire and hope get greater and greater, a vaster formula, a greater scene. Sarojini. Of use. Cipher, a cipher. So this is the life goddess. No? She's circling almost like a butterfly or a moth attracted by the light. She's circling towards some far off light. And those signs which he is following, these tracks, these signs, they cover things up rather than revealing them. They're making things more mysterious. But because they are used, they are tied to some immediate purpose, some immediate sight and will, they lose a lot of their meaning in that joy of use until they're completely stripped of their infinite meaning. They become a cipher, just a zero. There's some kind of shining light with unreal sense. Her signs still covered more than they revealed, but tied, bound to some immediate sight and will. If he tries to work them out for an immediate purpose, then they lose their meaning. It may be delightful to use them, but they lose their purport, their real significance. And if they go on using them, they are stripped of their infinite meaning and just become an empty cipher gleaming with unreal sense. And then there's another very beautiful image. Alice.
Armed with a magical
Bow.
and she aimed at a target kept invisible and ever deemed remote, though always near.
So that's the first image, as if life is an archer and she's aiming at some aim. But her bow that she's using is magical and haunted, so it doesn't do always what she expects. And she's aiming at a target which is always invisible. She doesn't know exactly what it is that she's aiming at. And that aim, that target, she can't help feeling that it's very far away, although in fact it's very close. That's the first image. And then there's another one. Sitting at the back there, would you like to read?
As one who spells illumined characters, 𝒉𝒂𝒍𝒊𝒏𝒈, he scanned a subtle angle weird designs, and the screen physical appearance of the blues, traced in the monstrous sands of Canto's planet. The thread beginnings of her lighted works, watch her charade of action for something. Read the known gestures of the syllables, and strove to capture in their whirling drift the dance and gracia of the sequences, escaping into rhythmic mystery.
Thank you. One more line. Sorry, one more line. Agree. Yes, thank you. Sorry. So this is Asvapati again, he. And it's as if he's trying to read a key book of a crabbed magician text. It's like a book of spells, of magic spells. And like an old book, it's very difficult to read. The letters are crabbed, dark and close together, difficult to know what you're reading. But this is a book of magic. He's struggling to read. He's scanning, he's looking at these subtle, weird designs that are all tangled up, so difficult to separate them even. No? And he's looking at, there must be some kind of theorem that's the key to all this, but it's screened, it's difficult. He's looking as if it's written in sand, in the monstrous sands of desert time, these tracks of life. He's there in the desert sands. He traces these thread beginnings, just small indications of life's Titan works, her enormous achievements. He watches her charade of action for some hint. Do you know what is a charade? Anybody knows? Can tell us? It's a kind of game which we used to play, which used to be played in the days, I suppose, before television and things like that. People had to keep themselves amused in the evenings. So one of the ways of doing that was charades.
In French.
You have the same thing, no? Yes. So, in a charade, usually you're divided into teams. There's one team, they decide what word is there, what will be the solution. And then it should have several syllables. So they act out little scenes, maybe 3 or 4 scenes, each giving a clue to one syllable of the word. And the others who are watching, they have to see what is happening and work out what is the solution. A charade. So he's doing something like that. somebody's acting out for him, or life is acting out for him, this charade of action. And he has to work out, interpret what it is that she's telling him. He's trying to understand life. So he can look at the action of life as a charade that has a secret meaning which he has to discover. Then another way of thinking about what he's trying to do, he was reading the no gestures of her silhouettes. I think this is a kind of Japanese theater, no. And we don't see the actors. They are covered up in dark cloths, and they make symbolic gestures, which maybe get reflected on a screen. I'm not sure about it. So from seeing these gestures, we have to work out what's going on in this drama. And then she dances, life dances. She's doing a sequence of steps. It's a kind of fantasia. It also has a meaning. He's trying to understand what is the meaning of her movements and her steps. Somewhere else in the poem, Sri Aurobindo speaks about the world interpreting movements of the dance, as if dancing should never just be movement, it should be something which has a meaning. So he feels that these movements of life, they must have a significance, but that significance is always running away from him, escaping into rhythmic mystery. These movements of hers, it's a glimmer of fugitive feet, as if she's always running away from him. And the soil on which she's dancing, the ground on which she's dancing, is also fleeing. It's also moving away.
And Shraddhavan is also very attached, as I said, so in agenda is the body's ondulation. When you move, when you take clean, it's very, very interesting. Everything is ondulation, the body.
It's in movement.
Yeah.
And that movement is significant, it seems. Slava.
In the language of term offshore, jokes and hopes, and the byways of short intimate desire. In the complex calmness of short dreams and round roads, vacant in timber of irregular roads, and wanderer strain to me.
Fugitive.
He lost its seeds.
Signs, it's signs.
He lost its shines and chase each very use. Either he met was ignorant of your cave.
They're key words. Yeah, let's pause there. So, he's trying to understand life. But when he looks at the thoughts and hopes of life, it's like a labyrinth, a maze, a pathway that's so complicated you can't see where you're going, and you turn corner after corner until you're completely lost. A labyrinth. In the labyrinth pattern of her thoughts and hopes, and the byways of her intimate desires. If he follows life, she's always leading him off the main path into a byway where created by her intimate desires, her wishes. And then he's trying to follow even her dreams, the complex corners crowded with her dreams. And then rounds, also in a labyrinth we have rounds and rounds, but they cross, these rounds cross each other, and very easy to get lost. These rounds crossed by an intrigue, a complicated arrangement of irrelevant rounds. They just mislead you. You feel you have to turn this way, but it's irrelevant. 𝒉𝒂𝒂𝒏 is like a wanderer, straying, he's wandering, lost in the midst of all these fugitive scenes. They just appear for a moment and then they're gone. He loses its signs. He can't follow the drift, the meaning of life's significance. He chases each failing guess. Maybe it's this way, but no, it isn't. But there do seem to be some key words, some clues that would open a door and show him the way to something meaningful. He always meets key words, but he doesn't know how to turn the key and where the key will take him. I think we'll stop there. But do you get the idea how he's trying? Life is so complex and mysterious. He's trying to understand, but all these signs, these indications, it's just bewildering. He doesn't find his way. By mysteries, they explained a mystery. A riddling answer met the riddle of things. I feel that's what we are doing here. It's so mysterious. But Sri Aurobindo will bring it to some conclusion by the end of the canto. There beat a throb of living interchange. Being felt being even when afar, and consciousness replied to consciousness. And yet the ultimate oneness was not there. There was a separateness of soul from soul. An inner wall of silence could be built, an armor of conscious might protect and shield. The being could be closed in and solitary. One could remain apart in self, alone. Identity was not yet, nor union's peace. All was imperfect still, half known, half done. The miracle of inconscience overpast, the miracle of the superconscient still unknown, self-wrapped, unfelt, unknowable, looked down on them origin of all they were. As forms they came of the formless infinite, as names lived of a nameless eternity. The beginning and the end were there occult. A middle term worked unexplained, abrupt. They were words that spoke to a vast, wordless truth. They were figures crowding an unfinished sum. None truly knew himself, or knew the world, or the reality living there enshrined. Only they knew what mind could take and build out of the secret supermind's huge store. A darkness under them, a bright void above. Uncertain they lived in a great climbing space. By mysteries they explained a mystery. A riddling answer met the riddle of things. As he moved in this ether of ambiguous life, himself was soon a riddle to himself. As symbols he saw all and sought their sense. Across the leaping springs of death and birth, and over shifting borders of soul change, a hunter on the spirit's creative track, he followed in life's fine and mighty trails, pursuing her sealed, formidable delight in a perilous adventure without close. At first no aim appeared in those large steps. Only the wide source he saw of all things here, looking towards a wider source beyond. For as she drew away from earthly lines, a tenser drag was felt from the unknown. A higher context of delivering thought drove her towards marvel and discovery. There came a high release from pettier cares, a mightier image of desire and hope, a vaster formula, a greater scene. Ever she circled towards some far-off light. Her signs still covered more than they revealed, but tied to some immediate sight and will, they lost their purport in the joy of use, till stripped of their infinite meaning they became a cipher gleaming with unreal sense. Armed with a magical and haunted bow, She aimed at a target kept invisible, and ever deemed remote, though always near. As one who spells illumined characters, the key book of a crabbed magician text, he scanned her subtle, tangled, weird designs, and the screened, difficult theorem of her clues. Traced in the monstrous sands of desert time, the thread beginnings of her Titan works. Watched her charade of action for some hint, read the no gestures of her silhouettes, and strove to capture in their burdened drift the dance fantasia of her sequences, escaping into rhythmic mystery, a glimmer of fugitive feet on fleeing soil. In the labyrinth pattern of her thoughts and hopes, and the byways of her intimate desires, in the complex corners crowded with her dreams, and rounds crossed by an intrigue of irrelevant rounds, a wanderer straying amid fugitive scenes, he lost its signs and chased each failing guess. Ever he met key words, ignorant of their key.